there was a part of me that didn't trust myself, that felt like, you're not really gonna listen to me. You're not really gonna honor me. You're not really gonna respect me and how I'm feeling and what I'm going through. You're just gonna go after these things you want, not really considering if you have the nervous system for it. Hey y'all, it's Chimdi. So this video is all about cultivating safety. I talked a bit about safety and feeling safe in your body in one of my reels, and the wonderful Maddie Lamb asked if I could make some content about cultivating safety. And I was like, I sure can, Maddie, let's get into it. So before we get into it, I want to go ahead and thank my Patreon people for being truly the sexiest people to ever do it, and my YouTube subscribers, because y'all are pretty hot as well. Like I said, it's a compliment to me that y'all subscribe, and I do not take it for granted. And also I have a newsletter if you want to sign up for it. I send it out every week, and I share the resources and the books, the podcasts, and the things I'm learning and the things I'm watching that have provided me with a lot of value, so they can provide you with some value as well. So let's talk about cultivating safety. And one thing I want to share is whenever I make a video and it's like a question, I think about the questions I have that question brings up. So when I hear a question about how do I cultivate safety in my life, for instance, the first thing I think about is what happened in your life that isn't already something you do. And I think whenever we have a question, it's because the answer has up until this point not been one that we can really sit with and be with. Like there's a reason and there's an intelligence to that. So I think just honoring and respecting that truth is really important, and that's how I always go with my process, is to really honor where I am and not say I am bad or wrong or there's something wrong with me because I don't already know how to do this thing. Because I feel like I truly only started feeling really safe in my body in the last year or the last few months, like it's been progressive, and it's been since I've started healing trauma. And the way the trauma healing that I am involved in really works is so much about being with what is coming up. So I think when it comes to cultivating safety, the first thing is, to what extent are you able to be with what comes up when you presence the bad things that happened that made you feel unsafe in the first place, that made your body not be a safe place to be. And in my experience, a lot of sadness, a lot of grieving comes with that. There's also a lot of anger and frustration, and there's a lot of confusion because we know we're supposed to be safe and loved and supported and taken care of. And so when we don't get that, it is really disorienting. I believe safety is something that is an internal process first, right? But the way we're able to create it internally is to first have it mirrored externally, to first have it seen outside of ourselves. Because as a baby, we're very vulnerable. We don't have any, we are not safe. As babies, we are not safe. So the reason we are able to feel safe is because we have parents, caretakers who make us feel that way. And so as an adult, if you're needing to cultivate that safety, you really need other people. That's a big thing. And I think if you aren't used to feeling safe, you may have a level of counter-dependence. This is a term that I heard from reading the book about childhood emotional neglect. Also, apologies for any background sounds you're hearing. I think they're doing lawn mowing, and I live near a freeway. There's a lot going on. So truly bear with me. I'm just gonna try to talk louder. But I read this book about childhood emotional neglect, and it talked about how we know about independence, we know about codependence, but counterdependence is actually this extreme aversion to needing help and being seen in your vulnerability. It was the process of being seen and of being witnessed that was the biggest shift for me. And so I'm in a 2-year trauma healing program. I'm in year 2, so we're in the second half of it, which is really cool. And as a part of the program, there are these groups that meet. I'm in one that meets every single week, but there are groups that meet at different times. And the point is truly to practice the transparent communication that we learn in the program. And transparent isn't about saying everything that's on your heart and coming up for you. Transparent means that you're aware of what's happening in your own body, you're aware of what's happening in the person you're talking to in their system, and you're aware of the space between you. You're aware of the relationship between you, because we're not in a silo, And so we get to practice that process. And as a result, when you are sort of charting what's coming up for you, you're able to do it talking to someone who is also present and aware and listening to you. So I'm going to include the link to some of these practice groups, and I believe they're free. So if you need, like if you don't have access to witnessing and support, whether it's from your family or from a therapist or someone else, this can be a really great space for you to like practice cultivating that safety inside your own body. One thing that I think is really important to note when it comes to safety as well is that you need a certain level of hope to take the self-responsibility to create a life that's different for yourself. And I think when it comes to experiences of trauma and overwhelm, especially if they are like prolonged, like for years, we can start to think that there's no point, like nothing's really gonna change because we've been alive for years and years and nothing has really changed. There is a wisdom to the things we believe, and they're informed by what allows us to survive. So if it's very painful to have hope about your situation and to have hope that things are gonna change, the wiser solution is to adapt a level of cynicism about the world and about your life and to say, well, there's no point in doing this. Things are gonna keep being hard. And that protects your heart so that it's not constantly being hit by all of these experiences saying, you know, no matter what you do, it's not gonna make a difference. And the key thing with all of these coping mechanisms, right, is that they're great because they get us through a certain level of our experience, but then at some point they start to feel like there starts to be some friction as we try to, you know, live in our purpose, create our dreams, have healthy, meaningful relationships, whatever it is. And it's at that point that we are then invited to say, oh, this belief system really isn't serving me anymore. What am I gonna do about it? For me, whenever I come up against that feeling and I ask myself the question, what's the point? That's how I know that there is a layer of pain that I have not felt. And because I'm up against it in this moment, there's an invitation for me to sit and be with those uncomfortable feelings. The thing I'm most grateful for is that I now have the experience and the tools to know how to be with this experience in a really titrated way. So not letting myself be overwhelmed by the fear or the sadness or the grief, but to take it piece by piece by piece so I can digest little bits of this feeling and re-own it and bring it back into my experience versus trying to like walk in my life dragging this heavy load and hoping it's not gonna weigh me down. One thing I do as a creative coach is I actually do a lot of emotional support because there's one level that's the strategy, which is really great and it's really helpful for folks to know, all right, how am I gonna approach growing my Instagram or posting regularly on YouTube or growing my community platform or whatever creative thing they're working on, getting more supporters on my Patreon. You know, there are all these like very specific strategic questions and I support my clients with that, but you can have a detailed point-by-point strategy and not execute it because every time you go to work on something, all of this fear comes up, all of this sadness comes up, all of this guilt, all of this shame comes up. And it's so paralyzing that it puts you into this freeze response. And instead of moving forward on this beautifully built PDF blueprint strategy document that I've created for you, you're just like, and you're not able to move forward. So it's really important to recognize that it's not just a matter of like, what is the next step I'm supposed to do? There's also a lot of emotional stuff that's saying, hey, it's not safe to make that next step. And I think understanding the role safety plays in our behavior gives us a lot of grace because we can realize, oh, it's not that there's something I can't do or something that's wrong with me. I've had experiences that said, hey, this is an existential crisis, and if you do this thing, it's gonna threaten your actual life. So it's better to not do that thing and to stay safe by staying small, and that's what will allow me to survive. And that's a valid thing because, hey, it helped you survive. If you're watching this video, it's because you survived whatever experiences were so overwhelming for you. And from my own experience, the beautiful thing about cultivating safety is that you are now connected to your body, and so you know intuitively the decisions to make that will allow you to continue to cultivate that safety. Because I know for me, when I look back at my 20s and early 30s, I made a lot of decisions that were genuinely dangerous, and it's by the grace of God that worse outcomes didn't befall me, you know, and I take responsibility for that because I know that was where I was in terms of my connection to myself. But once more of you is here, you're able to actually be still and not just react to life. And you can think, oh, okay, is this actually a good idea? You know, like, will this actually bring me closer to my goals? Will this further my purpose? Or am I responding from a place of fear or overwhelm or something else? And then not only am I able to not do things that would put me into danger. But I'm able to actually accurately gauge, like, is this a decision that is scary because it's genuinely threatening, or is it scary because it's emotionally hard? And so the things that I realize are about my emotion, I can presence and release that, and then make these decisions that I'm actually really excited about. So when I think about things like shaving my head, for instance, which is not a life or death decision at all, it's just a purely stylistic decision. But some people will never know what their own scalp feels like. Like, they'll never know what their own head feels like, because there's so much attached to, I have to look a certain way to be accepted, and I have to look a certain way to belong, and I really can't threaten that because that would not allow me to feel safe in my body, Things like getting eye surgery. I made a series of videos on my channel about PRK eye surgery, and I still get comments from people saying, I'm really, really scared about this. And I totally understand, because it's an elective surgery, and some people have had really bad outcomes. But that means that they are spending years not getting to have the experience of really beautiful vision because of that fear. And the videos that I made about quitting my job. For me, I was in a job, I knew within 6 months of the last job I had, the last 9-to-5 job I had, I knew within 6 months that it wasn't for me. And I stayed for 3.5 years. And there are people in my comments who are like, I've been in my job for 15 years, for 20 years. They give a lot of their time into an experience that isn't really aligned for them because there's so much fear about making a different choice. And there are other people who can be in a job for 2 weeks and they're just like, actually, my bad, never mind. And they get on out of there, right? When I think about being in the river of life, it's about, can we actually flow with it and not try to chase it and make it move faster and not resist and hold on to the banks, but really let it flow. And when we allow more safety in our life, when we really cultivate it, we allow more of our life to actually flow, and we get to have more experiences that are really fulfilling and satisfying because we're not so scared about putting ourselves out there. So I think in practice, cultivating safety looks like putting yourself in situations with people who are safe and letting yourself grow that internal resourcing and that strengthening your internal vessel to feel safe. I also think safety comes from consistency, creating routines for yourself, small things that you can do every single day or do it in a consistent way. So you are teaching yourself that you're someone to be counted on, I think is really important. My favorite new routine is the first thing I do every morning when I get out of bed is I do a plank for 1 minute. And I actually read this book by Tim Ferriss called Tribe of Mentors. The whole book is Q&As with different famous and successful people. And that's something that someone in the book did. And he said it was because it's it's a short amount of time and it is hard, especially if you don't do a lot of core work, but it immediately puts you in this space of you just achieved this hard thing. And then it allows you to move through the rest of your day kind of with that energy. And then of course it makes you more likely to do other kinds of exercise. And I truly had not been working out for months and months and months and months. And then I started doing these planks, and now I've kind of just started working out again because you're in your body and you feel good, and you just kind of get back into it, So I think the main thing is being around people who can support you and make you feel safe, because you can't really give yourself a vitamin you don't have. And then when you're by yourself in between these meetings, you can do things to let yourself know that you can be trusted. Because for me, a big thing was because I was very rough with myself and very I tended to override my nervous system. There was a part of me that didn't trust myself, that felt you're not really gonna listen to me. You're not really gonna honor me. You're not really gonna respect me and how I'm feeling and what I'm going through. You're just gonna go after these things you want, not really considering if you have the nervous system for it, if you have the time for it, if you have the energy for it. And that's just gonna lead to burnout. So I had created within me a distrust that I could not keep myself safe. And of course, when we're young, it's not our job to keep ourselves safe. A baby can't keep itself safe. It needs support from others. So part of my work has been unlearning this idea that when I was younger, it was my job to keep myself safe. And now as an adult, understanding, okay, now I do have to parent myself. What does it look like to really listen and be connected to my own body and my own wisdom, to know the decisions to make and to not make that will allow me to continue to develop in a way that's really safe and loving and held, versus really dangerous and reckless and just not just not fully aligned with my purpose, So I hope that's helpful, Maddie. I appreciate you asking the question. Let me know in the comment section, what is y'all's relationship to safety in your body? What is your relationship to hope? These are real questions. Asking y'all real questions. I'm talk to me about your relationship to hope and trust, and whether or not you've lived a life that's allowed you to feel as if you are safe enough to be courageous, or if you live a life of fear. Just let me know in the comments. in this public platform because we're all friends here. All right, I appreciate y'all. I'll see you in the next video. Bye.